Is your Dynasty team dead in the water? Are you missing playoffs? Are you rebuilding ready for next year? Well, if that's the case, first of all, I'm sorry you've had such a terrible 2024 season. I'm sorry you have Chris Godwin. I'm sorry you have Tyreek Hill. But you are ready to compete next year. So you need to be making moves right away to get ready for the next season. In this video, I've got 4 players you can go out and buy. For each of those players, I've got 4 trade suggestions: a straight up option, a player you can pivot up off, a player you can pivot down off, and an option for picks. And these players are going to help you win next year. Let's get into it. The first player that I have for you, the cover star of this video, is Jauan Jennings. Now, this might seem like quite a strange one. He feels like a redraft asset. He feels like someone that's really performing in 2024, but probably will be dead in the water going forwards. I'm here to tell you that I don't think that's the case. Jauan Jennings was obviously going undrafted in redraft before the season, and very, very low in Dynasty rankings as well. He's currently the wide receiver 20 on the season, which is incredible considering he's missed 2 games as well. Obviously, he had that huge blow-up week against my Rams in week 3, where he was the wide receiver 1, but has also finished inside the top 22 other times. My main thing on Jauan Jennings is that Deebo Samuel seems like he's dropping off. I'm not 100% sure he's going to be with the team next year. They can get out of his contract relatively easily. Brandon Ayuk might not be fit to start the season. They obviously also have Ricky Pearsall, but they've shown a proclivity recently to lean towards Jennings ahead of Pearsall in that X receiver spot that's normally Brandon Ayuk's. And one of the main reasons is that I'm not confident that Brandon Ayuk has actually looked better than Jauan Jennings in that X role. So first of all, obviously Ayuk might not be healthy to start the season after his big injury, but also I think Jennings might just be the better player at this point, and I think the team knows this. They extended him last offseason. They also extended Ayuk, but Jauan Jennings was nearly the Super Bowl MVP. There's a joke in the building about it being third and Jauan. He has been so reliable in a way that Brandon Ayuk just hasn't really been. So I think there's a very, very good chance that this is actually an asset that is going to be relevant in 2025 and beyond. But I think people are still treating him like this was a waiver wire pickup that's just for this season and then we'll forget about. But if you're smart, you can get ahead of that market. So, with all that said and done, what are some trades that I would make for Jauan Jennings to help you in 2025? So, for each of these players, as I said, I've got 4 moves, and I've decided to just stick with the wide receiver position this time. In terms of a straight up move, I've gone for Darnell Mooney. I think he's contributing a lot better than people think he was going to in 2024, but I'm not sure how sustainable that's going to be going forwards. I think there's a very good chance that the Falcons end up replacing him because I'm not sure he's actually the kind of player that will consistently finish as the wide receiver 9, which is what he is currently, which is insane. In terms of a player to pivot up off, I think this is going to be a little controversial, but Ricky Pearsall. I think, Pearsall seems a good player, but Jennings is definitely ahead of him in the pecking order. Even if they move off Deebo Samuel, there's still 2 players ahead of him, and I think Jennings is going to be starting as the X on this team. I'd be willing to add maybe a late 3rd off the back of Ricky Pearsall, or potentially something like Pearsall and a late 2 for Jauan Jennings and an early 3, so just a little move up from one player to the other. In terms of a player I'd be willing to pivot down off, Davante Adams. I think Davante Adams is probably worth, a 3rd more than Jauan Jennings at this point in time, but we're so unclear on what the Jets are going to look like next season. If he's even still there, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up cutting him. One of the worst trades we've seen in recent memory, just behind the Aaron Rodgers trade, which is incredibly funny, but not what this video is about. And then in terms of picks, I think an early 2nd. I don't think you need to send an early 2nd. I think a mid 2 would probably get it done. But for ready to compete rosters in 2025, the market is undervaluing this guy. He's going to be relevant on the 49ers into next year and beyond. Ben Sinnott is my other option that I think is currently really undervalued and I think is going to be ready for next year. He is currently basically unrankable as a tight end. He has 3 catches on the season, one of them for a touchdown, which was very nice. This offense is absolutely ascending. They are in need of a second receiver. I wouldn't be surprised if they go and target one on day 1 of the draft going into next season of someone to play opposite Luther Burden. Zach Ertz is fulfilling a great role in terms of what they're paying him, but he's also well into his 30s and he's a very limited player. He's, not going to get any yards after the catch. He's never going to shrug off a defender. He's just going to get the ball and lay down where he is, which is fine. It's, he's been way more relevant for fantasy than we thought he was going to be, but he's not the option going forwards. Ben Sinnott was someone that I absolutely loved as a tight end, as a developmental option. He's an absolutely fantastic athlete and great after the catch. He would fit in so well as a complementary piece to Terry McLaurin, but because he's done nothing in season, this is how Dynasty tends to get. He's being quite undervalued currently. I think he's going to be the tight end one for this team in 2025. I think that was always going to be the case. Aside from elite options, tight ends don't tend to do too much in their rookie season, and this has been the case with Ben Sinnott. But I think 2025 and beyond, this is someone who's going to be a huge part of a quite good offense with a fantastic quarterback. So the trades that I'd make to acquire Ben Sinnott, I think straight up I would be willing to trade Jake Ferguson. This is someone who's been an absolute darling in Dynasty because he was a waiver wire pickup who's blossomed into a startable tight end. How much longer that's going to be the case, I don't really know. This Cowboys offense is struggling. And obviously for the time being, they have Dak missing, but they need to go and get more pass catching options. One of the reasons why Jake Ferguson was really good in 2023 is because there was nothing else on the team behind CeeDee Lamb, so he was sweeping up a whole bunch of volume. I don't think he's going to be particularly relevant going forward, so if you can make that deal straight up, I'd be willing to do it. I'd be willing to pivot up off of Mike Gesicki again, maybe for a late third. Gesicki, again, more relevant when T. Higgins was out. Now, there's a chance that T. Higgins goes next season and Mike Gesicki stays as sort of the number 2 receiving option on the team. I think that's what they wanted to draft Jermaine Burton for. I think if they don't think Burton's going to work out, they'll go and get another rookie wide receiver. So I don't think Gesicki's going to stay as relevant as he is for much longer. In terms of a player I'd be willing to pivot down off of, and it's mad to be talking about it this week, Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is 34. Yes, he's just had an absolutely outstanding week. You can never really reliably start him because you don't know when those boom weeks are going to come. But someone competing might want Taysom Hill if they're shooting for upside for the playoffs, because as we've seen, there's a chance he can go for 50 points, which is that's mad. It's mad that happened, but it did. Then in terms of picks, I think a late second will probably get this done. This actually is quite a good tight end class, but if you're looking to compete in 2025, I think Ben Sinnott is probably a better idea to go for as your starting tight end than taking another rookie going forwards. If you are enjoying this video, I would please like to ask you to like and subscribe. We are steadily approaching 300 subscribers, which is genuinely insane because I've only been doing this for about 3 months. I would love if you would be willing to join me on that journey. There is so much more content to come in season to help you win that championship, but also these Dynasty trade videos so that even if you're not competing in 2024, you'll be ready to go for next season. And there's going to be so much more content like that in the off season. So please consider joining me on this journey towards 300 subscribers. But for the time being, let's get to our next target. And actually, the last 2 in this video are also rookies who've been underperforming in 2024. Odunze has been really struggling this season, as has the entire Bears offense or even the entire Bears organization. He's outside the top 40 wide receivers. He's only had 1 finish inside the top 20 wide receivers. But if you look a little bit deeper, he has had an over 80% snap share all but 2 weeks on the season. In the last 4 weeks, he's had 6 or more targets. He's actually the target leader on the Bears offense. Obviously, DJ Moore had a good week last week, but Odunze has been consistently getting and earning targets, particularly coming out of the bye. The key thing with this is that he's been struggling to get on the field in 2 wide receiver sets sometimes, with Keenan Allen sometimes starting opposite DJ Moore. Keenan Allen's a free agent this offseason. I think it's very, very unlikely that they re-sign him. It seems like his legs have started to go and he's lost any juice that he once had. Not that he particularly relied upon, quicks, but it seems like he's really starting to age out. The Bears are probably going to tear the whole thing to the ground this offseason. New head coach, new offensive coordinator. They've already got rid of Luke Getsy. So everything's really likely to change. I actually am really in on Odunze and Caleb Williams as buys currently ready for next year, their values are really deflated. Even though Odunze has started to show some flashes, and there's a very good chance that he's the wide receiver on this team for a quarterback that we all thought was the 101 last season in the draft and in dynasty drafts. So I definitely think this is a target. Like, this is a buy window while the Bears offense is struggling. It's not going to stay this bad for this long. The offense is going to improve next season. They're going to go and get an offensive head coach to help develop Caleb Williams. Odunze is at least going to be the wide receiver 2 on the team behind DJ Moore, and potentially even ascend into that wide receiver 1 status in 2025 and beyond. So the trades that I'd make for Odunze, in terms of a straight up option, I've gone with Tank Dell. They're actually in relatively similar situations. The younger of 2 relatively star wide receivers, with a third option who is aging out as well, with I'm going to say a stud quarterback. Obviously, we know CJ Stroud's a stud. We're not 100% sure on Caleb Williams yet, but I think it's still going to go that way. The difference being that Odunze has the chance to be the number 1 target on the team and to outperform DJ Moore, whereas Tank Dell is going to be the wide receiver 2 behind Nico Collins. In terms of a pivot up, I've gone with another rookie wide receiver, Xavier Worthy. Worthy's really disappointing this season. He was someone I was all in on. I actually had him as my wide receiver 4 above Brian Thomas Jr., who we're going to talk about in a second if you're looking to my left. I think you can potentially go and get Odunze for Xavier Worthy in a late 2. People are still excited about the fact that he's with Patrick Mahomes and think he can figure it out. I think it's his awareness, his situational awareness on the field that's really worrying me at the moment, and he's just not been able to connect with Mahomes. I think there's a worry that Mahomes likes to be able to connect with his players and have trust with them, and so they're probably not going to, he can get it done with anyone. Tyquan Thornton just signed for the team and is probably going to turn into a superstar now he's with Patrick Mahomes. In terms of a pivot down option, Brian Thomas Jr., Brian Thomas Jr. has shown more since he's been in the league. He does have wide receiver 1 overall upside if he can put it together. The situations are still the same as what we thought they were. We think Caleb Williams is potentially as good as Trevor Lawrence with what he's shown so far in the league. The Jags' offense is absolutely terrible. I think if you can pivot off BTJ and get a 2 and get Odunze as well, I'd be willing to make that move. Then in terms of picks, I'd be willing to send a mid first. If I was ranking Odunze in this class with where we are currently, I'd probably have him as the wide receiver 3 behind Ted McMillan and Luther Burden, but I think it's kind of a toss-up with Luther Burden and Odunze. So definitely, if you can get him with a mid first, that's probably later than you'd be selecting him if he was in this class. So I think it's definitely something I'd be considering doing. If you liked the talent of Jonathon Brooks before the 2024 NFL draft, the buy window for him opened the moment that they re-signed Chuba Hubbard to a long-term deal. Obviously, Jonathon Brooks has been very disappointing. We were hoping he'd be back around week 5. He's about to make his debut, and we are heading into week 12. Chuba Hubbard has really impressed. He's the RB9 on the season, which is something that none of us expected. If you are a believer in this talent, you should still be going to get Jonathon Brooks. The value is so deflated right now. When we enter that redraft mentality, it becomes a what have you done for me lately type thing. Jonathon Brooks obviously hasn't done anything, and now they've re-signed Hubbard. People are panicking and they're thinking it's not going to happen for him. If you liked the talent, which I did, he was my RB2 in the last class just gone, you can go and acquire him on the cheap right now. We've seen multiple offenses where, yes, it cuts the upside, but you can have 2 running backs really, really produce for fantasy. Just look at what the Lions are doing. These 2 backs are quite a nice complementary pieces to each other, and I think that if the Panthers offense is to improve next season with either a new quarterback or steadily improving Bryce Young sneakily might be a dynasty buy, but I'm not willing to say that in a whole thumbnail in a video because people will pile on me. But if you think the offense is going to improve, then Jonathon Brooks' value is so deflated right now. So now is the window to go and get him. In terms of moves that I'd be willing to make, I'd be willing to offer J.K. Dobbins straight up. Dynasty is quite concerning for J.K. Dobbins. Obviously, he's had all of these injuries. It's amazing to see him competing, and he's a fantastic redraft asset. But do I think he's going to produce for the Chargers in 2025 and beyond? I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to go and target a rookie running back in this fantastic class that we've got coming up. Probably not going to get Ashton Genty. They're going to be picking too low. He's probably going to be a top 15 pick, and the Chargers are playoff bound. But they're probably going to go and target someone on day 2 to become their starting running back ahead of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. If you can do it straight up, I prefer Brooks' outlook for 2025 and beyond. The same with Rachaad White, to be honest. I probably do this straight up, but I don't think you have to. I think you can get a 3 on top of Rachaad White. That 3-headed monster is really concerning for fantasy, and I think Bucky Irving is the better player. I think that will probably start to show out in the next year or so, that the Bucs will start to believe that and start to give Bucky more playing time. I definitely prefer him straight up to Rachaad White as a player. And so I think if you can get a little bit on top and add Jonathon Brooks, that's very exciting to me. The pivot the pivot down is someone that I'm really uncertain on. So Joe Mixon has been elite for fantasy this season, but he's about to turn 30. That's really the window where we want to be getting off running backs. If you can find a contender who has Jonathon Brooks and you can sell them Joe Mixon, you can probably get 2 2s on top. You might even be willing to get a late, you might even be able to get a late first on top for Joe Mixon, just with how incredible he's been this season. But do I think he's going to be an elite dynasty asset? Maybe in 2025, probably not beyond that. I think he's probably going to start to drop off. And then in terms of picks, I think a mid-second, it's worth considering that this running back class is absolutely fantastic. So I'd probably be willing to spend an early second, but you're going to be able to get fantastic running backs all the way through the back of the second round. Jonathon Brooks, though, if he was in this class, maybe RB3 or RB4. So yeah, you're looking at where you'd be willing to take him in this class, and a mid-second will probably get that done. So that is going to do it for today's video. Those are the 4 players that I would be looking to buy for 2025 and beyond. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and drop your comments down below. I'll answer every single one. Have you made any trades for these players recently? Do you need trade advice? You can always drop me a message below, or on Twitter, or on Blue Sky. All of the links are in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.